Good afternoon. Did you have lunch? Good afternoon. Thank you very much. It is a very big honor to be here to make a short presentation to colleagues in the industry and other members of our country on a very important topic called climate change. FIDIC stands for the International Federation of Consulting Engineers. It is 110 years old. And ASEC is how many years? 55. So FIDIC is twice the age. So ASEC is a good son or daughter of FIDIC. The headquarters is in Geneva, Switzerland. And for the first time, in the General Assembly meeting held last month, where I had the honor of being elected as Vice President, we now have a lady president. Tumpigie makofi. Thank you very much. And then the other hat I wear, amongst others, is a director at Kenya Private Sector Alliance. Victor is our deputy CEO. And that is the apex voice of the private sector. But before I go very far, I just want to ask the former chairs of ASEC to please stand. The former chairpersons of ASEC. Can we give them a very warm round of applause? Thank you very much, gentlemen. I know there are many others who may be joining us or have joined us virtually, etc. But what I wanted to just say is, once you develop an interest in FIDIC, I'm happy to see that many of our members continue being active. And the presence of the former chairs, including myself, is a demonstration of commitment we have to this organization of FIDIC. I want to congratulate the Council for this second conference. During my tenure, and those gentlemen who have stood, we did not have a conference. But now we have taken these things a notch higher, and now we have this function, for which I must thank all of you for coming here today to be part of these engagements amongst colleagues. So I'll take you through quickly through a presentation that I had prepared. If we can have the second slide, there it is. FIDIC, globally, the body has membership that comprises of over 40,000 consulting firms. The countries that have got membership within FIDIC, those countries have a population of 6.5 billion. You know, the global population is in the region of 7B, with a combined GDP of 30 billion. And what we do is engaging, networking, and influencing in a very big industry of $8.5 trillion. So we have 92. Membership of FIDIC is through member association like ASEC, and we have 92 of them. We have 1.2 million consulting engineers as members. We are on 5 continents, etc. So a very, very major voice globally. That little map you see there, which I guess you might not be able to read. If we can have the next one, please. Yes, that is just showing where we have had conferences globally, these international conferences. In Africa, we have had them in Morocco and South Africa. And ASEC Council, we need to bring it here. We need to bring. If there's something that we need to do if I'm in this position, is to bring this conference home, isn't it? So let's start working at it, and I'm sure it is possible. The next slide is about the regional structure, presence in Africa, Middle East, North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. So it's a big global body. I will not go into the details given the time and how far behind we are. Can we have the next slide? This is the board. The top line, horizontal line, are the board members. And I'm privileged to sit there. And then we have different committees. I look after Africa. I look after the governance committee within the FIDIC board, because there must be governance. And it is taken extremely seriously. And then if you go lower down, I'm a board liaison of the Integrity Management Committee, and also a very, very important committee to FIDIC, which is the Contracts Committee, that develops, improves these contracts that we sell globally. I go to the next, and these are highlights before I go to the main topic. Really what we do in FIDIC is to represent the consulting engineering industry, enhance their image, be a thought leader in matters to do with infrastructure. We also look at driving excellence, quality, inequality, risk, etc., issues to do with integrity, and also developing talent, amongst others. We have many, many players. I will not go into, could you go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Next slide. We have many activities. We have an academy. We have a center that does credentialing, so that you are certified as a trainer, adjudicator, consulting engineer, etc. We have a forum we call Global Infrastructure a Forum, and we have these conferences, etc. In other words, we engage at a global level very, very actively, and probably you'll see why. Africa, 1.1 billion people currently, which is 16% of the population in this world. 50% of those are below the age of 25. So you can imagine how much infrastructure this continent needs. Our population by 2050 will be double. Again, a lot of infrastructure will be required. 30 million square kilometers of area. Big presence of the Chinese in infrastructure development on this continent. Over 1,270 large dams have been built, and therefore our good friends, when you build yours, will put them here. I'll personally put them in this statistic. Raw materials, 30% of the raw materials in this world are in this continent. How much value do we get? Is it appropriate? That's a conversation we shall have another day, but it's of concern. Growth rates, you can get these statistics. How fast are the economies growing on this continent? They are amongst the fastest, strangely enough. The population I've talked about. You can go to the next slide, please. Next. Right. The construction industry. The business is estimated to be over $22 trillion. I don't know whether, how many digits are those? There are 11, isn't it? 22 trillion. So if we multiply by 155, I think we have to get a calculator and put it side to side, isn't it? And see how we can extend the numbers. What we're trying to say, it's a huge, huge industry. 22 trillion. And what they say between 2016, which is past, and 2040, the world needs $94 trillion to develop infrastructure. And therefore, what we're saying is that this is an industry where we cannot afford to lack presence and active presence. World Bank, since 2000, has invested in over 1,700 projects worth over 200 billion. And from 1947, almost 14,000 projects. And the Inter-American Bank, 20 billion projects, etc. So we are saying a lot of money put into infrastructure. Why? Because of the need for economic development of countries. Going green, I will touch more on this, but there's a lot more financing now in green, what we're calling green finance. Projects that are green, there is money out there for investment. Sustainable development goals, there's a table, if we can have the next slide, please. Goal number 1, no poverty. 2, zero hunger. 3, good health. The next one, quality education. They all need infrastructure, meaning they need engineers. Goal number 5 touches on integrity. Goal number 6, clean water. 7, affordable and clean energy. 8, decent work and economic growth. Industry and innovation, number 9, all of them needing also FIDIC members to be active. We have the rest of them there. Also, Sustainable Development Goal 15, life on land. 16, place justice and strong institution also needing infrastructure. So what we're saying is that our profession is well aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. And then what we have developed in FIDIC as I come towards climate change is a state of the world document, because it is important for FIDIC to be a thought leader in the conversations, amongst others, climate change. And the first one that we have recommended is net zero, the aim of reaching net zero, which has been brought forward to 2045 instead of 2050. Net zero means the amount of carbon you are producing and what you are removing are equal, more or less. So you have net zero. You know, you people, your presence here and all your activities that you have done, many, let's just take the last 2 days. You have been engaged in activities that have produced a lot of carbon. Most likely you came on a plane, on a vehicle that was producing what? Greenhouse gases. The food you've eaten most likely was cooked through a fuel that emitted what? Greenhouse gases. As engineers, and I like to really point at civil engineers who deal with concrete, steel, how do we make those products? What is the prime source of energy in cement manufacturing? It's coal, isn't it? What about steel? Similar. So what we are saying is that the processes that we are involved in, infrastructure is one of the biggest contributors to green gas or greenhouse emissions. And therefore we need to think about what we're doing. That's why you'll hear terms about decarbonizing, looking at the carbon footprint, etc. We need to be ready to take our role in creating and ensuring net zero. We need to have an ambitious plan. We need to lead the way. Can we go to recommendation number 4? We need to lead the way because of the level of activity that we are involved in. What are we doing? So, there needs to be a consolidated and consistent approach to FIDIC's campaign activity on climate change if we are all to meet the SDGs and ultimately net zero. And therefore the goals that we are looking at as FIDIC include launching the climate change charter, which we have done, and then including promotion, document design, websites, web pages, etc. And therefore, let me encourage you to visit the FIDIC website and read about the climate change charter. Right, and then activities around climate change goals. We are going into COP26. Also, one of the goals was to highlight key FIDIC activities and a consistent climate change brand. For example, the next State of the World report on net zero. And then we have running long-term, creating long-term certainty and resources for delivery of these goals. So, the FIDIC Charter sets out how we address climate mitigation You know, you can mitigate something. There is potentially a negative impact, you can mitigate it. Put into place actions to reduce it, to counter it. But sometimes we have to adapt. So there is also climate adaptation. And then, given the weather conditions that are becoming more harsh, we have to think of building resilient infrastructure. And therefore, this charter outlines the activities of FIDIC, what do we do? FIDIC member associations, what do they do? Project teams, the people who execute these projects, what should they do? Companies, employers, and then you as an individual. And I'll really just do a high level, because I know we are way behind schedule. But what we're trying to say is that everybody, including yourselves, has a role to play in addressing matters to do with climate change. So FIDIC as an organization, we advocate for the Sustainable Development Goals, Sustainable Development, climate change mitigation, supporting engineers to adopt best practices, advocacy, collaborating with the multilateral development banks, the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, developing materials, etc. I will not go into great details because they are in the charter. Let me go to the next group, which is the MAs, ASEC. Again, advocacy on those SDGs, encouraging engineers to adopt best practice, developing policy and advocacy documents, contribute to government and industry policy discussions, and promote dedicated FIDIC climate change resources for professional engineers. So that is high level. I've only touched on a few to do with member associations. So what we'll expect ASEC to do is to actually go through this document and onboard these particular actions. The individuals, please look at the way you carry out your work, the project teams, how you define what you're doing, looking at risks, issues to do with carbon emissions, advising your clients, and obviously monitoring. Those are just a few that I've highlighted. Companies must facilitate employees, bring awareness, support employees, help develop skills, and become climate change champions. And many others that I have on that particular list that I cannot go fully through. But as I come towards the end, now that you're seated here, let's deal with you as the individual. What should you do? So audit personal behaviors and thinking on climate change, and consider how you can make a positive contribution to action on climate change as an individual or project team member. So these solutions are not going to come from just anybody. It is the way you and me, the way I decide to travel, what I cook with, etc. Commit to expanding your knowledge on climate change, knowledge of carbon loads in every design. Whatever design you're doing, have you considered how much carbon will be involved? And advocate net zero, etc. And as a good lady comes here, one last thing, we actually produce a carbon emissions report, because you need to deal with numbers and to see how badly we are doing. One last thing, these contracts that we used are supported by multilateral development banks and other lenders. They are documents that are taken extremely seriously. Please use ASEC to train etc. I think I'll leave it there, and I'm hoping that you will join us in the next FIDIC conference. That will be September next year, but in May there is FIDIC Africa conference. Karibuni.